So I would like to welcome our final speakers. Medicine, of course, demands innovation. It's our relentless pursuit of new ways to keep people healthy, better ways to heal them, and particularly with cancer, find ways to care for survivors so they live healthy, productive lives long after their treatment's completed. Innovation in healthcare is the sole focus of Stanford Medicine X. They specifically work toward patient-centered innovation in research, clinical care, and medical education. Dr. Larry Chu is the executive director of Medicine X, which runs internationally renowned conferences on healthcare innovation, patient engagement, and emerging technologies. He's a practicing physician and professor of anesthesiology and perioperative and pain medicine at Stanford University School of Medicine, and he runs not one, but two labs, an R01-funded lab that studies, my battery just went dead, opioid tolerance and physical dependence, and the anesthesia, informatics, and media lab that focuses on healthcare IT projects spanning education, clinical informatics, and mobile computing. Dr. Chu was kind enough to fly here and come to speak after just getting in from Germany. With its focus on patients, Medicine X also hosts an Emerging Leaders program that brings patients and students to Medicine X conferences and events, which is where Alicia Staley comes in. Ms. Staley is an engineer and three-time cancer survivor who wanted to create a way for people to connect personally after a cancer diagnosis, to further educate themselves and get support. So being an engineer, a blogger, and a social media enthusiast, she created breast cancer social media, or hashtag BCSM, and anyone with a Twitter account will recognize that handle. When it launched in 2011, BCSM broke new ground. It is now a global breast cancer support community that provides evidence-based information to thousands of people, and which has sparked countless online patient conversations. Ms. Staley is Director of Patient Engagement at Science 37, a mobile technology and clinical trial company, and she is also an e-patient advisor to Medicine X. Larry and Alicia, I'm so grateful to hand the podium to you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today. So, as Dr. Blanke just said, my name is Alicia Staley. I'm actually a three-time cancer survivor. I was first diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was 19 years old, and I've been subsequently diagnosed with breast cancer twice, in 2004 and again in 2008. And I like to say that I guess I'm a walking billboard of what innovation in cancer clinical trials is all about, because I'm going into my 27th year of survivorship, but without the patients and researchers, doctors and nurses that worked in the cancer community and in cancer research for decades, I don't know that my story would be as successful as it is in terms of cancer survivorship. So I was very struck when I came in this morning and saw the Hope Foundation t-shirts on the table. And this is not a plug for the t-shirts, but you should buy a t-shirt. It said, "Research results hope." And as a cancer survivor, those are probably the three most powerful words I've ever seen put together in a sentence, or three sentences actually. Research results hope. That's exactly what 27 plus years of survivorship is all about, being diagnosed with cancer 3 times. You need people to step forward and be innovators in a space in order for us as patients to continue on a journey of a very full, happy, and healthy life. So my thanks to all of you out there today that are working in this field as researchers and innovators, looking for new ways to help patients on this incredibly difficult journey. So I start my presentation off with a thanks for all of you and the work that you're doing. But I have the opportunity to come here today and sort of do a step back with all of you and go, what is innovation? What does it really mean? We talk about it all the time. We talk about disruptive technologies, innovation in cancer clinical trials, new ideas, how do we grow, how do we move forward as a cancer community? And I think it's we have to boil it down to very simplistic terms. Innovation is all about where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow. That's exactly what innovation means. It's taking small steps to make big changes in the way that we live our lives and the way that we do work through our cancer journeys. So what inspires innovation? It's being in an environment where you can ask questions and bounce ideas off of colleagues and talk with patients and talk with other researchers. It's building collaborative networks where you don't fear repercussions from asking questions, that you feel encouraged to ask questions, that you feel the collaborative community of your colleagues, knowing that you can pose a question or ask about doing something a different way, knowing that people are going to pick up that torch and go with you as you're thinking through things. We want to think big, we want to start small, but we need to start taking steps forward. That's where innovation really happens. It's when you begin to sort of step out of your comfort zone. So instead of doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, it's being willing to take a chance and doing something new. So as I was preparing for this talk, I did a little research. I said, all right, we're going to Chicago. We're going to talk about innovation and cancer clinical trials. And what happened in Chicago that might inspire innovation today in the SWOG community as we're sitting here? And I came across a very interesting thought. Henry Ford actually was visiting Chicago in 1912 when he witnessed the meat cutter industry, or he visited with industry leaders in the meat cutter and the meat packer industry, and learned about the essentially the meat packers would create their own assembly lines for moving meat from one end of the factory to the other, but allow the meat cutters to cut off the different pieces they need, the top flank, the skirt steak, the ribeye, everything all the way down this chain. And he realized that he had something, there was innovation in the way that these men were doing their everyday job for producing meat or creating the meat that was here. And he decided he was going to take that back to his factories in Detroit and figure out how to come up with a better assembly line. So Henry Ford wasn't the one that invented the car or invented the interchangeable parts in a car or the assembly line itself. He came up with an innovative way to take all those disparate parts and reimagine what an assembly line could be. So I think we're at a point where what can inspire innovation in clinical trials? Perhaps it's the Model T, and maybe it's just as simple as that. So here is Henry Ford visiting Chicago. That's actually a screenshot of Chicago in the middle of what it looked like here in 1912, which is a little bit different than what we see out there today. And here's a snapshot of what the factory line looked like after he designed and innovated, essentially making an assembly line, instead of a static proposition, a dynamic proposition. So what is innovation again? It's simply a change of state. It's moving from a static position to a more dynamic position. In Henry Ford's case, it was moving a static assembly line to a dynamic assembly line. He found inspiration here in Chicago, outside of his core industry, which was automotive. He came to Chicago, visited with different industry leaders, and found out there is a new way of looking at what they were doing in the automotive industry. So today, as delegates for SWOG, what industries can we look at? What other patient communities can we look at? What other innovations in cancer, or what other innovations in healthcare can we look at to help us find a different way? So here we are. What is the Model T clinical trial? Is there a Model T clinical trial? Is there a way for us to move from a static to a more dynamic process in clinical trials? And I think that happens when we encourage the patient to become more part of the clinical trial process, from the design to the development to the interaction with researchers and clinicians in ways that we've never done before. It's opening up new conversations, asking new questions, and not being afraid to engage with new partners across industries to look for answers. So what happens if we encourage the patient to become more active in this process? What if partnering with patients could speed innovation in research? What if partnering with patients could improve data sharing, not only among researchers and scientists, but healthcare communities in general? What if partnering with patients makes research more accessible, not only for scientists, research, and healthcare professionals, but the patient communities themselves? And what if partnering with patients in cancer clinical trials could change the culture of medicine? What would that look like? What would that look like? What would the Model T clinical trial look like today after thinking of these different things? Dr. Chu is here today to give us some examples on exactly what that would look like in those 4 different communities. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chu now to take a peek.
Okay, thank you so much, Alicia, for that great introduction. This is a picture of Alicia and me from Medicine X. We're great collaborators. And I think, one big thing about innovation is it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary because it is new. And I think the best way to conquer fear is to give people reasons and permissions to do new things. So that's going to be kind of what we're going to do. Alicia and I planned this together. We came up with these 4 reasons. And so I'm going to start this section by kind of giving you permission and giving you reasons to try new things. So I'm going to stand here as an anesthesiologist to share some cancer research with you. All right. So I found myself recently sitting in the audience, and the speaker put the slide on the screen. And here it was. I'm going to share the same slide back to you now. 5-year prostate cancer survival rates. Germany, overall is 94% 5-year cancer survival. And then next to it is the Martini Clinic. Best in class is what the speaker said. Extremely high volume clinic. Top of the line practice. 95% prostate cancer survival rates. So the innovation person in the audience, I'm thinking to myself, Germany, not much to do there in terms of innovating prostate cancer survival rates. That's what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? Raise your hand. Do you agree with me? No? Okay. Because I'm not a cancer researcher? Okay, that's right. Okay. Well, you are right. Okay. So the example here is partnering with patients speeds innovation and research. So my next slide is going to reveal something. And that something is that even though all over mortality might not show that there's variability in quality or care, if you think of mortality as representing quality of care, what if you take a look at patient-reported outcomes, meaning what matters to patients? So one of the things that the Martini Clinic does really well is that they track patient-reported outcomes. So if you take a look at patient-reported outcomes, 1-year incontinence, there's a huge difference between best-in-class outcomes on that measure, 7% versus 43%, and 1-year severe erectile dysfunction, 76% versus 35%. So now you are starting to see variability between best-in-class. And so now as researchers, we can start to wonder, what is the Martini Clinic doing differently compared to other people in Germany? And can we go and look at that and say, from a research point of view, surgically, what are they doing differently? Postoperative care, what are they doing differently? Can we study that? Can we see if we implement those things? Can we reproduce those different changes? Can we implement into practice and take research to improve care? So patient-reported outcomes, participation, partnering with patients to create patient-reported outcomes can improve care. So that brings me to my next topic, which I'm sure you have talked about at some point, Michael Porter, his work in value-based care, discussions about not only talking about what we do in medicine, but can we create value with what we're doing? And that really cuts to the heart of what matters to patients, what are the outcomes that are important to them, and how much are we spending to create those outcomes that matter to them. How many people here have heard of ICOM? Raise your hand. Okay, so a few people. ICOM is a global organization working to try to create a set of standards that healthcare organizations around the world can use to map patient-reported outcome measures across a variety of chronic health conditions so that we, as researchers and as patients and as providers, can see how the Martini Clinic compares to Stanford Hospital, to University of Chicago Hospital, because we're all measuring the same thing. And we have a global set of standards around patient-reported outcomes. And Michael Porter and a few other researchers are heading up this initiative. So they have now developed a series of patient-reported outcomes, global standards for colorectal cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer. They have a great website. I encourage you to check this out. They also are looking for collaborators. It looks like there's a lot of researchers here who may want to collaborate with them on developing some of these global standards. But I bring it up because they partner with patients in developing these global standards around patient-reported outcomes. And more importantly, they're implementing these standards around healthcare organizations globally so we can, again, begin to compare outcome measures between organizations. So patients can now start to really better make choices. And we as researchers can now really start to do better work. And we can now start to really begin to understand how we can implement into practice what we're doing, because we can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Okay, another point. Partnering with patients literally speeds research. So we have some new data literally hot off the presses. This is from Ken Getz's group in Tufts. He's a healthcare economist. So he actually did some work to map out economically the contribution of bringing patients in early on to the clinical trial design process. So if we bring patients in to our research teams when we're designing the clinical trial, can we map out what the benefit is economically and the benefit is in terms of time, of their value that they bring to the research team? If we bring them on as equals to the design, the research team in the design of the trial. So here's what they found. If you bring patients in, not only do they help in terms of reducing the number of IRB revisions, okay, and they also improve the patient experience, so you're going to have an easier time of keeping patients in your study, and probably you're also going to have an easier time to recruit patients in your study. But here's what they found. 30-month acceleration from pre-phase to product launch, 17-month acceleration from pre-phase 3 to product launch. Time savings. Okay. Now, what about money? That's also important, right? The bottom line. I fight with my finance people all the time for all these little budget line things. I love my finance, this is being recorded. I love my finance people. I love them. Compared with an investment of $100,000 in patient engagement, return on investment exceeded 500-fold the investment. 500-fold investment, return on investment. I'm just going to do this for Raul, my finance guy. Pardon me. 500-fold return on investment. Anytime we're looking at budget line items around patient engagement, 500-fold. I'm not sure that there's anything really that provides that kind of return on investment. Let's talk about the value that patients can bring around data sharing. So one of the things that is becoming really important around research initiatives involving big data, especially initiatives that involve patient-generated data and donation of data for large numbers of people. Precision medicine initiative, for example, is the need to improve data sharing. So last year, President Obama and his precision medicine staff contacted us at Medicine X because they realized the problem around data sharing if they were going to really achieve their mission of the 1 million participant cohort for the Precision Medicine Initiative. So they asked for our help to come in and help them figure out the sensitive issues around data sharing for the Precision Medicine Initiative. We brought in our expert patients from Medicine X with a bunch of our community members, our Medicine X staff, and a diverse stakeholder group to try to work out these issues around data sharing. And what we uncovered is we really have to, as researchers, to have important discussions around not only the ethics of data sharing, but what we can give back to participants for what they give to us as researchers. Access to data is one thing. Access to publications from the work that we do is another thing. What do we give back to participants for what they donate to us? And as the work continues, private industry, Verily here and the Project Baseline group, they're going on to do 10,000 people studying the transition from health to chronic illness. They worked with us at Medicine X this year to continue that work and mapping out what can we give back to participants. And that's not something we often think about as researchers in our own work. What can we give back to our participants in our work? But that's very important as we continue to think about these bigger data initiatives, because in order for us to engage our participants in our work, we have to also think, what are we giving back to patients? We also are learning that patients are much more powerful than we think at many things. They are experts. We have recognized that for many years at Medicine X. They are more powerful than we think at many other things, and they're extremely powerful at spreading information in very meaningful ways at medical meetings. So I heard we have, I think, 19 patients here at this meeting. When we did, this is a publication we just published a few months ago. What we found was, compared to healthcare providers or researchers or physicians, patients are much more powerful propagators of information at medical meetings. And not only that, when they share information at medical meetings, the information that they share is engaged with much more powerfully than the information that's shared by physicians or researchers. So they are incredibly powerful advocates and partners for us as researchers to get our work out there to the public. Yet they only represent 1.5% of the voices at our meetings. So they're an untapped resource. But it's not just us. The OMRACT conferences, which are organized around the rheumatoid community, have also done work in studying the impact that patient voices have had at their meetings. And they, through qualitative thematic research, have shown that patients at their meetings have widened the research agenda, have improved patient relative outcomes of clinical trials that have been generated from their meetings, and have changed the perceptions and beliefs of the patients and researchers that have attended their conferences, and have led to wider patient involvement of patients in the research that has come out of the OMRACT conferences. But they've also said it took a lot of work, over 10 years, to get that scientific output improved. And they had to do a lot of work to get that kind of engagement from the patients at their meetings. And we found the same thing. It's not easy. We have a framework of engagement we call Everyone Included. That's something I encourage you, if you want to learn more about, you can go to our website that explains how we look at it, everyoneincluded.org. But it's a framework for engagement that brings both sides together on equal footing of mutual respect for the knowledge that each person brings to the conversation, to collaborate. It's about collaboration and co-creation. Because what we have learned throughout the years is that you can have all the stakeholders in the room, But if you don't have respect for the expertise, then people don't hear each other. And we don't tap into the expertise of everyone. And you lose out on those opportunities for collaboration. So we have a framework, we have a curriculum, we have a program that works on both sides to bring people together. And I'm going to end by sharing a little bit about that program, which we call our Emerging Leaders Program. And this year, we're now recruiting to our third cohort. Medicine X is in its 7th year. We had over 130 patients through our curriculum program. But our Emerging Leaders Program, which is a formal program of pairing patients with students and having them go through a formal curriculum and culminating in a capstone project that they work on together, that's in its 3rd cohort grouping. So in this program, the capstone project, they had 2 tracks, but I'll share with you the capstone projects that they could choose from. And they had to work through a structured curriculum where they really had to explore this idea of trust, this idea of what is it like for the other person on the other side, and through a series of 8 weeks, getting to know each other through the structured curriculum, they also had to work on a capstone project. And for people in the medical research track, it was a collaborative redesign. And these were 3 questions that they could choose from. How might we orient research initiatives to reflect patient-oriented outcome measures? How might we clarify the process of drug design, research, and clinical trials? How might we make research more accessible and digestible to the public? They could choose one of these projects to work on together as a pair. So I'm going to end my section now with a video. And I'm going to let these pairs of emerging leaders share some of the reflections of their work together as my last message to you. Because I think it represents a message of hope that we can change the culture of medicine. We can change the culture of how clinical trials are done. And we can do that by starting with the future. So I'm going to play that video right now. Oh, and these were the pairings.
Hi, I'm Amy Price.
Today's date is the 25th of August.
Hello, this is Tom Wilson with week 5 of Stanford's Medicine X ELP program video update.
Hello, this video is for week 4 and it's about an ideal visit.
I am a doctoral student in the School of Nursing at UCLA, and I'm actually on my honeymoon. Beautiful white lake.
As a patient myself, I always think that it's very important to include the patients themselves in the decision-making process.
We really discussed his interaction with finding a solution for a problem that he had. He was homebound for 15 years. He saw a plethora amount of doctors and physicians to find a cure for his illness.
We got to talking, and we were a lot more alike than I would have guessed. You know, he's an entrepreneur and setting up a business and getting an advanced degree in technology. And I am a patient who spent 11 years homebound with a mysterious illness until I figured out what was wrong and eventually developed the surgery to fix me.
This week we talked about the ideal anatomy of a healthcare visit. One thing that kept coming up over and over and over was communication. Communication is key. Communication and transparency build the foundation of trust.
The most important part of a healthcare visit, of any interaction with any practitioner, is having everyone in the room respected and on the same page. I've had doctors come in and just like talk down to me and just be super rude and act like I have no idea what's going on. Our biggest thing about what we both agreed that was important for practitioners to do is to really take the time and get to understand and get to know the patient and understand where they're coming from.
We talked about how empathy could maybe be taught somehow in medical school, and patient stories and videos could be shown to medical students because it has like a much more impactful way than just teachers telling them about empathy.
A lot of it is feeling valued as a person. You know, when a patient is in the waiting room for 40 minutes, 50 minutes, not knowing when they might see the doctor next, that isn't the best system to make someone feel that we value their time.
The doctors would talk to her family members or her husband and not really address her as if she were a child. And I can understand that being a frustration because she's not a child, she's a grown woman, she's very well educated, so why would people come talk around her and not directly to her?
Because what always comes out is that life is full of change and uncertainty. And so it's not so much about the end result as it is how we make that journey count for one another.
If everyone included were to be used as a checklist of care, to say, okay, we are all equal partners in this, but it really has the potential to change quality of care. That being said, Shari and I had a chance to really talk about what it means for everyone to be included, because everyone included in medical care also includes pharmaceutical companies. Does it include insurance companies? Does it include sort of the corporate aspects of medicine?
I do think it might be difficult to implement, though. I feel like the doctors are socialized to take the credit for the healing that happens within individuals. And so I think it might be difficult for them to relinquish this power.
Wrapping things up, talking about how supporting each other is one of the most important things that we can do, how vital that is for a cohesive healthcare experience.
Shamia and I found that no matter how tired we were when we started to talk together and share ideas, like we were fired up and enthusiastic about the changes we could make, not in changing healthcare, but in redesigning it, on building on what people had already done well, and suggesting some tweaks here and there. So this is it for Amy Price. Thanks so much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
I think that was an excellent video that basically showed the. To me, that video shows the power of what we've been doing as e-patients over the last 5+ years at Medicine X, and I've been honored to be included in this program and had the opportunity to be the e-patient advisor this year and work very closely with the student and patient pairs that we just saw in the video. And for me as a patient, there's nothing more inspiring than being able to witness and participate in those conversations, because I feel that there are a number of patients and advocates that want to give back to the scientific and research community, particularly here in the cancer community. And programs like Medicine X have allowed us to do just that. And thank you very much, Dr. Chu, for allowing me to be part of this journey with you. Lessons learned today. I'm going to do a quick recap. We learned about partnering with patients and how it speeds innovation and research. Partnering with patients will improve data sharing and does improve data sharing. It makes research more accessible for not only the scientific community, but the patient communities as well. And partnering with patients in cancer clinical trials will change the culture of medicine. I think we're seeing the beginning of that right here in this room. And we'll continue to see that as programs like SWOG continue to work in bringing on advocates and more patient partners and collaborators in different, very innovative programs that you have here that are already in process. So I'm very excited and very hopeful for what can come out of organizations like this in the coming years. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to speak here. Hopefully in a few years I'll come back and see different topics in the presentations, topics like clinical research as a care option, or simplified consent processes, inclusion and exclusion criteria that are much more attainable and easier for patients to understand and for patients to actually participate in research projects. There's an idea of what the value exchange is for all participants involved in clinical research. Patients desperately want to help. They want to volunteer. Advocates want to be a part of this journey with you because we are extraordinarily grateful for what's been done to get us where we are today. And I'd love to get to a point where patients don't look for clinical trials, that clinical trials come to the patient, that it's a seamless process, that if there's a trial, there's a patient, and there's no heartache or headache in trying to connect those two pairs together. My mantra, or the way that I believe my advocacy in clinical research, what it's all about is clinical research is delivering the right patient at the right time, at the right place, with the right dose of medicine. And I think that that's what powers our communities forward. And that's certainly, as a cancer survivor, what drives me forward every single day. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share this story today.